Today's stories don't all follow one specific trend or topic. They're not all Ouija board stories or ghosts that came to them in the middle of the woods. But what these stories all have in common is that they all gave me full body chills. One of them even made me cry the first time I read it. There's twists and unexpected turns, and I think you're in for a fun one. So buckle up and get ready. Welcome to Haunted Hotline with Katie Santry. So, after last week's episode, when my sister and I gave you our spooky story, yes, I am still taking ownership and forever will. A lot of you guys wrote in with similar stories. So, what I've learned is that ghosts love to stand in doorways and watch us sleep. So, here's another one of your stories that is a lot like ours. This happened years ago. My sister and I shared a room in the attic of an old house built in 1890. One night, my nephew, who was 5 or 6 at the time, slept over, and in the middle of the night, I suddenly woke up to seeing him standing on the side of his bed. It was dark, but I could make out his silhouette. So I called out to him, thinking maybe he had a bad dream and he was just afraid. So I said, "Michael, do you want to sleep with me?" And he didn't answer. So I pulled back the covers and patted the bed and said, "Come here." He still didn't answer. And in that very moment, I saw movement from in his bed. I propped myself onto my elbows and I saw Michael asleep in his bed, and the shadow still standing there facing me with no movement at all. I repeated the process of closing my eyes and shaking my head, and finally, after the third time, the shadow was gone. I ran over and I picked Michael up and put him in bed with me, obviously, as you fucking should. And I never saw the child-sized shadow again. My sisters, on the other hand, they've had their own encounters. But lucky for me, this was a one-time deal. Guys, I'm trying to figure out what I think is creepier. Like, is it creepier for a ghost to have something to say? Where they're like gonna come up to you and be like, "Hey, bitch, I don't like that you're remodeling the basement. I liked it better before." Or is it creepier when they're just gonna stand there and stare at you while you sleep? Honestly, I think I'd prefer, if I had the choice, if I had two ghosts standing in front of me and they were like, "You pick," I pick the ghost who's gonna tell me what the fuck is up, not the one who's going to stand there and watch me sleep. Before we dive into our stories for today, I wanted to catch up a little bit because this podcast, well, yes, it is obviously meant to be spooky, but it's also meant for us to be friends. I want to know you. I want you to know me. So I have a little announcement that honestly, if you follow me on social media, you've known this for a hot minute. But me, your girl, mama, she pregnant. That's right. I'm pregnant and I am fucking thrilled. I'm so excited. You may or may not know, I have a 3.5-year-old son named Austin, and I have 2 soon-to-be stepkids. So this baby is going to be Brandon and I, my fiance's, first child together. I've been really open about my trying to conceive journey, about my pregnancy journey, the first trimester, and how stressful it is. So I just figured I would let the podcasters know. My nosy little bitches. You only get that reference if you were here for the rug. So yeah, if you listen to these podcasts, you may not notice much of a difference, but if you're watching me, you start to see this face swell up a little bit. I figured you should know why. But without further ado, and honestly, I have no fucking idea what that means, but I always like to say it. We're going to get into our first story because it is a mindfuck and a serious roller coaster, and I think you guys are going to love it. I had an increased heart rate the entire time I read this story, and I can't wait to tell it to you. It was sent over anonymously, so the information I give you in the story is all I've got. You're probably going to have some unanswered questions. So do I, but that's okay. Dream demon, something else. Trigger warning, I tell a story that involves murder and it's a little gruesome. I will try to leave out the worst details, but it is important to the story. Backstory. I dream a lot, and I remember my dreams frequently. I've also had a lot of nightmares ever since I was little. I'm talking bone-chilling, disturbing, and sometimes gruesomely sickening nightmares. Jesus Christ. I have a bad dream here and there, but like I wouldn't describe them as this. Side note, I love this. I'm super normal and have no mental health issues. That's probably my favorite side note I've ever heard. It's just a prelude of like, this story's crazy. I'm not crazy. Just the story. I love it. I truly appreciate it. I had a great childhood and I never even watched horror movies or scary movies. So I don't know why I get these dreams. I have no explanation. But because these nightmares were so bad and so often, my brain developed a coping mechanism where as soon as a dream started to get too scary, I realized I'm dreaming and I would either wake myself up or continue the dream and manipulate it so the scary thing would go away or the dream would just change completely. So here it is. Guys, this is so fucking weird, I swear. This happened over a span of 4 years while I was in high school. I don't remember the first time she appeared, but I started having dreams that someone was watching me. They weren't always scary dreams, some were super normal, but there was a creepy girl watching me the whole time, just observing. She was a presence just behind me out of view. I don't know how I knew it was a female, but I just did. I would go through the dream like normal, and when I woke up, I would think, that was weird, and I would wonder if she represents my subconscious or something. She wasn't bothersome, just an interesting addition to my dreams at the time. So I shrugged it off. Over the next couple years, she started appearing more and more often, especially when I was having a nightmare. She wouldn't take part, she would just observe. Then she started appearing more in the scary dreams, and I was having many, many more scary dreams. Finally, my junior year, she started appearing every night, multiple times. I developed insomnia and could only sleep when someone slept next to me. That's so sad. She started, I don't know the right word, conducting or guiding my dreams. The good or even just the normal dreams would instantly turn into nightmares the moment she appeared. Oh, that gives me goosebumps. Oh my God. I started to think of her during the day. I felt like something just out of sight was watching me now in real life. I was constantly looking behind me, thinking I would see her. One day I was walking to class and I felt like she was there. I stopped dead in my tracks and it hit me so hard that her name was Sabrina. This all felt so crazy. I didn't tell a soul and I convinced myself that it was all in my head. It got so bad that it was affecting my sleep, my work, my life, my mental health. I felt like I was drowning. One day at the beginning of senior year, I had the most gruesome dream yet. Sabrina was there and I couldn't stop it or even wake up, even though I knew I was dreaming. In this very realistic feeling, vivid dream, I got home from school and opened the front door to my whole family, mom, dad, and my 4 siblings had been brutally murdered. My sister was in the entryway and it was so messy, I knew instantly she was gone. I walked up the stairs hoping to find my other siblings still alive, but after checking each one spread throughout the house, they were all dead. I'm leaving out a ton of horrible details, but it was bad. I was sobbing, yelling for my mom. I walked into her room and my mom and dad were laying on the bed unalived, as if we're using TikTok lingo. I somehow knew it was Sabrina who killed them at this point. Yes, I knew I was dreaming, but it still felt like my whole family was gone and I did not have the ability to calm myself or reassure myself that they would still be alive once I woke up from the dream. I was a mess and sobbing. I started screaming in my dream for Sabrina to show herself, which I had never done before. I had never tried to communicate with her or even acknowledge that she existed. I started turning around in circles, screaming her name, trying to see her. I yelled at her to show her face, and finally she appeared in front of me. She was small like a little fairy with no wings, but floating. Her eyes were solid black, no white, and her hair was black and scraggly, her tiny clothes ripped and dirty. She laughed at me and had a child's voice, but with fangs like a vampire. I told her she needed to stop and leave me alone. She laughed and said, I have no power. She has taken it from me. And she said she liked my nightmares and she wanted to keep playing in them. Horrifying. Imagine a demon fairy, like evil Tinkerbell, is what I'm imagining here. I looked around at the gruesome scene and suddenly I really realized I was in a dream. I told her, no, this is my dream and I'm in control. Yeah, bitch, you fucking tell her. I told her she has no power in my head and to get out. She laughed and refused, looking around happily at her mess and clapping her hands. It was so creepy. I thought of an idea that I could trap her, and as soon as I had the thought, a black leather box with huge chains appears next to her. She looks at it horrified and then looks at me so scared. Her eyes were normal now. She starts to turn and I told her to stop and she froze. I told her to get in the box and she did, but she was fighting me for control. She obviously did not want to go in. I closed her in and tied the heavy chains around it and locked it. The house and everything dissolved into blackness and it was just me and the box with her inside. I threw her into the abyss and told her to leave me alone. And then I woke up. I haven't had one dream with her in it since, and I have had way less nightmares without her. Here's where me and this girl no longer are on the same page. Every once in a while, I'll be in a normal dream, and then all of a sudden, I remember the box, and I feel her calling to me, asking me to open it, but I ignore it. Now, 20 years later, I dream about her maybe once a year or less. Sometimes when I'm awake, I get this feeling like maybe I should open the box. But then I'm like, where did that come from? And I remind myself that I will never open the box. Thank you, bitch. When it first all happened, it felt so real, like she wasn't just something made up in my mind. I thought maybe I had trapped an entity. But as the years have gone by and it's not so fresh, I wonder if Sabrina was real. Why would she still randomly call out to me in my dreams to open the box? Should I open it? I promised myself I never would, but I don't know. Let's recap the story where Sabrina, the little the little teenage Tinkerbell demon child, tortured and murdered your whole family. Let's not open the box. I think little Miss Demon Tinky Demon, she needs to stay in that box for life. Okay? We're not opening it up. We threw that key far away, and that's where it's going to stay. Okay? When I read that story, I thought it was super fucking creepy, so I hope you liked it. Okay, I don't know how I didn't think about this historic moment for me personally until just now. But this little demon fairy reminds me of a time that I talked to my own brain devil. FYI, this has to do with marijuana and potential hallucination. But honestly, it's one of the creepiest things that's ever happened to me. So this 100% belongs on the podcast, okay? So we're taking it back to 2020. We're taking it back to COVID, early COVID. You are locked down in your house. And I was bored, as we all were. Bored in the house, and I'm in the house bored. What do? I find my husband's very old marijuana. And I decide I'm going to Google a recipe on how to make weed butter so that I can make weed brownies. I, mind you, also do not smoke weed. I don't do edibles. I don't do gummies. I truly don't know what came over me, okay? So I create this butter and it smells horrendous. So I think that I burned it. I think that they're ruined. I make the brownies anyways. And the brownies themselves, 10 out of 10, baby. They were good. I eat one and nothing is happening. So in my stupor, I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it. These brownies are great. I've never told this story. These brownies are great. I'm going to have not one, not even two. I'm going to have 3 brownies because now I think I'm just eating a delicious sweet treat. I was so wrong. Scroll ahead. We're now maybe 2 hours in. And this actually was documented on my Instagram back in the day. I can't believe I even really posted these pictures. I'm laying down. My whole body is not only numb, but it seems to weigh 700 tons. Me moving, not an option. Getting up off the couch, not going to happen. So I'm laying there and I start to have a conversation with a little devil Tinkerbell of my own in my head. If you guys ever seen Black Mirror, I was obsessed with that show. It was so fucking good. There was an episode where essentially this exact thing happened on the show, where there is a little mini person in your brain who sits at an entire control panel and they control our physical bodies. And what happened to me was I started to talk to this control panel pixie fairy bitch. And she starts to tell me, hey girl, I know that you think that you control your body, but look what you just found out. Me, I am a separate entity. I am your subconscious, but I am its own person, kind of. Honestly, unless you've seen Black Mirror, this is kind of hard to explain. Or if you're on a gummy right now, maybe you're going to understand. You're going to be like, holy shit, me too. So basically, I have a full conversation with this girl inside my head, and she's telling me that she controls me and that I think I control myself. And when I'm not super duper, super high, that I'm not able to connect with my subconscious in the way that I'm able to right now. This is 5 years ago. I still think about this moment weekly. So at least 52 times a year, I go back to that day and I'm like, holy shit. Like, was I making it up or was I actually having a conversation with my subconscious, which is a separate being from my physical body? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit me up in the DMs. And let me know A, if this has ever happened to you, B, if you think I'm fucking insane, C, I want you to know that I never did this again. I threw those brownies away. No, that's not true. I actually gave the brownies to my friend and they put them in their freezer. And then her husband ate them months down the line and had the exact same experience. Not necessarily talking to the little Tinkerbell devil in his brain, but he ate one. He's like, oh, these are definitely not working, but good ass brownies. Ate another. He was so high he couldn't go to work the next day. So if you need a recipe for weed brownies, I don't have it anymore. I found it on Google. But if you ever have a desire to talk to your subconscious, if you're interested on what's going on in the very, very, very depths of your brain and soul, might I suggest 3 weed brownies. Anyways, it's time for our next story. This is a long one and multi-layered. Late 2017, I was bathing my then 6-year-old daughter while I was pregnant with my second child. When my daughter turned and looked at the door and stared at it in absolute fear, my back was to the door and I asked her, what's wrong? She said, who's here? I said, what do you mean? She said, who's in our apartment? I told her no one was in our apartment. She said, so who just walked past the door? Oh, like, I can't imagine my son saying that to me. If he was like, oh no, mom, I totally just saw someone walk behind you. No, thank you. My leg hairs, they'll grow back so quickly. She said, I'm feeling sick just typing this out to you right now. Same. She explained to me that she had seen a figure with an orange blanket or towel wrapped around their head, and she couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. She had never seen this person before or after, by the way. Soon after this, I was laying on my bed when I felt something make a thumping noise on my mattress. It felt like someone flicked their finger on my bed. This happened a few times. And no, it wasn't a spring because this was a brand new memory foam mattress. I love that she's correcting us before we can even question her. You fucking tell it. Tell it. At the time, it was so full and fluffy that you could jump on one side of the mattress and you couldn't even feel it on the other side. That's like those Tempur-Pedic commercials where they have a glass of wine on one side of the mattress and you're having a whole ass party on the other side and the wine doesn't spill. That's what I'm envisioning here. I like the visual. I much appreciate it. Soon after the thumping incident, in the middle of the night, my daughter and I were laying in my bed when it started to shake. My daughter was asleep, but I was fully awake. I wanted to scream, but I didn't want to wake her up. I know that feeling. There's nothing worse than when a toddler or a young child wakes up in the middle of the night and you've now got a 45-minute conversation about why the moon looks the way it does and when dinosaurs died. No, thank you. It shook for about 10 seconds the first time, and then it stopped, and then it shook again. My dog also started noticing weird things because she began to growl randomly at nothing. She started standing guard by my bed, which is honestly the only time I felt safe in that apartment. Little pupperoonies. Then one night, I thought I heard her pause as she jogged towards my bed. I turned over to greet her and pet her, and then I realized she wasn't there. Nothing was there. No one was there. I felt so unsafe. Then I had my baby in February of 2018. It was a terrible C-section. I felt so horrible. I lost a lot of blood and needed 2 transfusions. I was in pain for months. C-section mama here. I didn't lose that much blood, nor did I have transfusions, but the pain of recovery from a C-section and ghosts haunting you at the same time, not a fun combination, I can imagine. My baby cried so much unless I carried her. Oh, a little colic baby. From the moment she was born, she could only sleep if she was laying next to me. She would cry nonstop if I ever put her in a bassinet or a crib. Fuck. Me being pregnant, terrified of having a bad sleeper. I'm really lucky in that my son was a really awesome sleeper, so I've never really encountered this like baby screaming, crying unless you're holding them thing. And I truly can't imagine dealing with that and a ghost simultaneously. And then there were accidents with her as she got older. She fell a lot, which is common with children as they grow. Correct, yeah, I feel you, girl. But this was different because it felt unsafe in our home. I was also angry all the time. Could be postpartum depression, not necessarily the ghost. But maybe, I don't know. Our home was not a happy, safe place. When my little one was 2 years old, she began telling me past life memories. Fuck. She would sometimes turn to me and tell me how a loved one was feeling or what they were doing, randomly, when she was not around this person. One day we got home and we saw our living room had been trashed. A heavy mirror looked as if it had been thrown and cracked nearly down the middle. A bunch of other stuff was scattered on the floor. My dog looked terrified. I was so spooked. I wanted to get out of there so bad. A few months later, we moved into a new apartment. I thought it would all be fine, but my youngest daughter started having night terrors. She woke up crying and was seeing things while fully awake. This went on for so long, and we did not have any good nights of sleep. Ugh. When she was 4, she saw something evil in a mirror that I had in the living room that had belonged to my late grandmother. I was later told that this mirror had been gifted to her. And I guess because it was being used as a mirror and facing the front door, it was inviting bad demons in, which is what some spirit person had told me. You know what? Trust the spirit person. I don't fucking know. I cried. I felt like something evil had been harassing my family and punishing my youngest child. I finally had enough of her suffering, so I went to a church and asked for help. Guys, this is when I cried. Okay? We'll call it pregnancy hormones. I don't know. Maybe you'll cry. I brought home some holy water and I prayed. I must state that I am not religious, but I do believe in a higher power. Just a couple days later, I got my kids ready and we all went off to see my mom. My mom asked, "What is in her hair?" I saw a white fleck in my youngest daughter's hair and I pulled at it. Out came a fully intact white feather. Hand to God, if there was no witnesses, I know nobody would believe me. It was fully intact. My mom was annoyed and asked why I hadn't brushed my kid's hair. Fucking, she would. She would. Like, do you not know that they're being surrounded by ghosts and demons? Give her a break. I said, "Mom, I just combed and brushed both of their hairs before we came here." I immediately told this to my spiritual friend, who explained that a white feather meant she was being protected by angels. It was a sign. And guess what? She never had a night terror, a vision, or a past life memory ever again. I myself am also not a very religious person, but that story and the thought of like a little baby child being tormented by demon ghosts and then God decides to send an angel to protect her and there's a white feather in her hair had me emotional, okay? Again, I'm pregnant. Don't judge me. And just like that, we're on to our next story. This one, I've got to say, they made a decision that I don't recommend. And I'll just leave it at that. I was in my 20s and living in a rented house with my boyfriend and best friend in a typical middle-class neighborhood in the suburbs. The house was a ranch-style kitchen and living room on the sort of part of the L and a long hallway that led to the rest of the rooms. One afternoon, I was home alone and I heard music coming from my room at the very end of the hall. When I walked in my room, the music was coming from a clock radio. I don't know when this story takes place. Feels old. Because I don't know the last time I had a clock radio. I used to in high school, but I have not had one of those in a very long time. I just assumed that I had accidentally set the alarm when I shut it off that morning, and I thought nothing of it. I was completely unbothered. That is, until a week later. I was home alone again, and in my room kneeling on the side of the bed, looking underneath my bed. I thought I heard something, and I lifted my head, and I saw nothing. So I went back to what I was doing, and I heard it again. I lifted my head one more time and waited, and that's when I heard it. My clock radio was going again. Only this time, the radio was moving slowly through the stations. I don't know why that creeps me out so much. Like, the ghost can't just choose, like, a pop station. Like, the ghost has a musical preference. They were like, do I want gospel? Do I want country? Do I want R&B hits from the 2000s? Like, they were deciding what they felt like listening to. That creeps me out. I turned it off and I left the room completely freaked out. I told my boyfriend and he didn't believe me until it happened to him when no one else was home. The twist in this story is that my boyfriend worked a second job at an upscale restaurant, and one of his regulars was a psychic, Sylvia Brown. We all know and love Sylvia Brown. On one of her visits, he asked if he could ask her a question, and she stopped him before he could even ask. And she said, "You have a spirit of a young boy living in the house that had died many years before, and his name was Jeff or Jeffrey." So this is where they went wrong, okay? We started mentioning him by name, and all hell broke loose. The automatic coffee maker wouldn't turn on at the set time. The touch lamp in the living room would be on when we woke up. The front door would stick like we were trying to open it and someone was on the other side pushing it closed. Until, of course, I yelled at Jeffrey to stop, and we would be able to open the door. One morning, as I was waking up alone after my boyfriend had left for work, I felt the weight of a child sit on the bed next to me. I bolted out of the fucking bed. Obviously. I'm sorry, I'm not here to sit with Jeffrey on my bed. The craziest thing was that I saw Jeffrey's spirit on 3 separate occasions. Once as a white outline in a dark garage, and twice as a small gray cloud. The first time I saw the cloud, I was sitting on the toilet in the ensuite bathroom. The door between the bathroom and the bedroom had a pocket door and it was hard to close, so it was open. Whether the door's hard to close or not, I never close the door to use the bathroom if I'm home alone. Do you close the door when you go to the bathroom? If you're home alone, who the fuck are you closing it from? I love that she explained why the door was open, but like, girl, I'm never closing a door if I'm home alone in a bathroom. I need to be able to see it, so I need to be able to see those ghosts, okay? The cloud floated across the open door from right to left and into the bedroom wall. But the second time I saw the cloud, I wasn't alone. My boyfriend saw it too. We were in the living room watching TV, and he thought it would be funny to invite Jeffrey to come watch with us. I bet you regret that. I told him to stop and kept nervously looking around the room, as would I. Less than a minute later, I saw the cloud hovering in the living room where the wall and the ceiling meet. I whispered to my boyfriend, "Good fucking job, he's here." He pointed at the cloud and said, "Is that him?" I've experienced other supernatural phenomenons in my life, but this was by far the scariest. I didn't live there too much longer after, but I always wonder if it happened to anyone else who moved in after us. I always actually think about that and find that to be interesting. I know a girl, she's actually the girl who does my Botox, and she had, maybe I'll have her on the podcast. She's had some super creepy stories, and then she moved out of the house. Her name is Olivia. Olivia, if you're listening, maybe you should come on the podcast and tell the story. She has since spoken to the people who moved into the house after her because they reached out to ask if creepy supernatural shit was happening. That's crazy. That's crazy. And also, it would validate the shit out of me if I thought I was losing my fucking mind and there was a ghost in my house, I moved out, and then the people who move in start to experience the exact same things. Oh my God. I would pat myself on the back and also acknowledge the fact that I'm not as crazy as I thought. It's time for our last story of the day. It's kind of quick, but it was a little bit spooky. And also, Grandpa's kind of a badass. And I like that he got pissed off about this. So yeah, here we go. I used to work nights and my fiance would be home alone. One night, his grandfather came to have dinner with him. And as his grandfather pulled into our driveway, he noticed a woman in pink pajamas in the living room. Knowing I was at work, he went inside, pissed off, and confronted my fiance about it, thinking that he had snuck someone into the house and was cheating on me behind my back. After my fiance showed him around the whole house to prove there was no other woman there, fucking you go, Grandpa. They continued to eat dinner and didn't think anything of it. When I got home, he had told me about what happened. But what Grandpa didn't know was exactly 2 years ago that day, that fucking day, my mom had passed away in the living room from cancer. She was wearing her favorite pink pajamas, and where his grandpa saw her through the window is exactly where her recliner was. He had no idea where my mother had passed away or obviously what she was wearing when it happened. That description was my mom to a T. 2 years to the day that she had died. I feel like you have to like really let that sink in. That's fucking nuts. That's nuts. And like stories like that are how I don't understand how anyone can say ghosts aren't real. Like the first story I told today about seeing someone standing over a child in the middle of the night, and then you rub your eyes and they're not there anymore. You can attribute that to so many things. You can say that that is a dream. You can say that you had eye boogies and you were just seeing something until you had really fully rubbed them away and woken up. To me, this kind of story, there's no coincidence here. Nobody else was home. The grandpa had no way of knowing that the mom had passed away in that spot in those pajamas. And that's what I love about these spooky stories that get sent in, because some of them I'm like, could be nothing. You know, this girl has a dream about Sabrina, who's a little fucking devil fairy. Like that, sure, could be absolutely nothing. It was a weird story, but like there's no proof in the pudding there for me, okay? But this last one, like, how do you disprove that? How do you say they're not real? That's the shit I love. Stories like that, short and sweet and to the point, but like that's the stuff that I love. I also love that Grandpa was ready to fuck his own grandson up because he thought he was a cheating man. Cheating with a ghost. So let's recap what we learned today, okay? 1, dream fairies are terrifying. And once you get them locked away in a box and you throw away the key, don't ever consider reopening that box. 2, if you are having some nightmares and troubles with ghosts and then pray and find a white feather in your hair, congratulations, you're God's favorite now. Because that's incredible. And I love that for that little girl. And I hope she's living her best life right now, wherever she is in the world. 3, if you find out that someone died in your house, don't say their name and ask them out to play. Don't invite them into your world, into your life. Because then you'll have to start seeing ghosts all the time. They're going to sit next to you on the bed, sit next to you on the fucking couch and be like, hey, what's on? We're watching Schitt's Creek? Or are we watching the new episode of Dexter? No, thank you. And 4, Grandpa was about to fuck that boy up. I love it. I love it. Go, Grandpa. I hope you guys enjoyed those stories. I enjoyed telling them. Next week, I will have a guest sitting here with me. He is a tour guide of the most haunted tour in Columbus, Ohio. I cannot wait to hear his spooky stories. I want to hear all of his creepiest moments and all of the encounters and all of the things that have happened to him in his years of doing these tours. And if you have stories to tell, please send them to me. Not only could I read them on the podcast, but I would love to have you guys on. Give me a ring to tell your own spooky stories. If you're local, you can come on down to my humble abode, the studio that I've built in my basement. If you're not, we can hop on Zoom. There's a link in my bio on Instagram, and I'm filming this before I know if the TikTok ban takes place. So if TikTok is gone, fuck, I miss you all on there. If it's not, the link is also in my bio on TikTok for you to submit your spooky story. And if you want the opportunity to tell it live on the podcast, just add your contact information into that form. Give me your name, your email, your phone number, and I'll hit you up if your story's really fucking good. So I'll see you next week on Haunted Hotline with Katie Santry. Peace out, nosy ass bitches.